Welcome, everybody, to this Monday night's Soul Smart, where we're going to take 20 minutes to help you get a better understanding of the unique formulas that Soul Naturals has to offer. And we're going to start off with a testimony from our very own Tiffany. And this is a really neat and powerful testimony about our formula, the longevity. And as she says here, she says she had low vitamin D for almost 10 years despite taking 10,000 IU or more of a daily dose and sunshine. She said she never felt deficient until she incorporated the longevity into her wellness protocol. Her stride as a runner extended 6 inches further while running. Stretching got easier and her energy became more balanced. Said she was finally absorbing nutrients, and it was proven with lab work that she hadn't been able to do in 10 years or in years prior to this formula. So this is really powerful. And we have a lot of people who have measurable results with this formula, but this was such a unique one that I definitely want to make certain that we shared it. So thank you so much, and shout out to Tiffany for sharing that. Now, what makes our formula unique from all the other D3 formulas out there? Well, first off, we're going to start talking about some of the key benefits that are in this formula. For instance, our formula also addresses vitamin D3. And also with adaptogens, it is always going to help support that immunity with the D3 and help to modulate. Because remember, adaptogens help the body to find its ideal balance. An overactive or underactive immune system is not a balance. A good formula of D3 should come in and help support your bones and joints. And we're going to talk about that and what plants that are in this formula help to do that. Mental outlet look. A lot of people are not aware that something that's called seasonal affective disorder can be directly driven by the amount of vitamin D3 that you're literally able to absorb and utilize in your body, but it does help with your mental outlook. Of course, daily nutrition. This is another benefit that comes from this, and you're going to learn that with our some of our different plants that are in here, that they're undeniably strong in what they bring to the table. And respiratory. Who would think that a good D3 formula could help support respiratory? Again, some of our plants that are in this formula also support the respiratory system. And everyone always asks, so we want to make certain that people know that each capsule of the longevity does contain 1,000 IU of the vitamin D3 so that we can measure it and have an idea. So Guducci, what in the world is Guducci? Most people have never heard of this plant. And then they're going, why in the world would this be in our formula that helps support for D3? Well, Guducci is known as an anti-inflammatory. And I want you to pay attention as I share about these different plants as to how they might work together, the inner workings, and how they support the system in our goal that we have with delivering the D3 and the end results. So if you remember, one of the benefits from this formula is that it helps with bones and joints and inflammation. And you're going to see on here that this is an anti-inflammatory plant. It is a plant that is well known for how it supports the kidney health. So when the Chinese look at the principles when it comes to health, they see that there is a relationship between the kidneys or waters and bones in the system. So kidney and the skeletal system. And when water is out of balance in the system, their term for this, then the body does not hold adjustments as well. So this plant, or as you're going to see right there, adaptogenic type plant, does help the body to maintain that balance, which means that it helps support your skeletal system in holding its adjustments and staying in place. Very beneficial for a formula that is designed to help support our bone health. Again, adaptogenic properties. This plant brings that to the table. And the adaptogen, remember, helps the body not only come into ideal balance when something's out of balance, but what does that look like? That can mean the mood health. It can mean our energy. It can mean any part of the system, helping it to work like it needs to. This also supports our joint health. And we find that it's very calming to the nervous system. It supports the liver, and skin health. A lot of people are familiar with how D3 does target skin. Now we've got reindeer lichen. This is an amazing, you, you know, this lichen grows up north up in the Arctic Circle. This is something that the reindeer eat to help maintain their vitamin D levels in their system, in their D3. You will often find the plants in the geographic region that help support and bring to the table what the wildlife or the population in that area needs that is naturally there. So the deer eat this to support their vitamin D. Now, why is vitamin D important? Well, number one, it helps to heighten your muscle mass, strength, and coordination. When you don't have a good vitamin D levels, then you are a little more challenged in that type of navigation. I always want to make certain that people are aware of the power and impact that vitamin D has on your normal teeth development and health. And for the record, the teeth are developed, both sets, in utero, which is why I have down below there important for bone development in utero, because it's not just for the skeletal system, it's also for the teeth. So a lot of people think that if their child's having issues with what their teeth look like, that it is impacted directly from what that diet they're eating at that moment. The actual placement and how much constrictures in the jaw has to do with what happened in utero. So this makes this product very beneficial for someone is pregnant. And also, when you have enough vitamin D, you will not require as much calcium. Now, how can this be? Well, because the body will try and it works to compensate. So when we have enough D, then it's starting to be able to utilize your calcium as it's coming in, as opposed to hanging on to it and storing it for later. Now, how do you know if you're at risk for being low in D3? Well, number one, the easier you tan, believe it or not, the more melanin that you have in your skin, you're probably more at risk for being low in vitamin D3 because you don't assimilate and process it. So the more pale your skin is, yes, you may burn easy, but you do incorporate that faster and better into the system. And depending on where you live geographically. Here in the United States, basically, if you were to take and run a line horizontally across the United States, running through Oklahoma City, and running across the United States, everything moving north of there, the further north you go, the more deficient a person typically becomes in vitamin D3. But again, most people are deficient because even if they live in the area where they should have lots of sun, either they have got enough of a tan where they're not absorbing as much, or they're actually spending so much time indoors that they're not getting what they need. Alfalfa. Anyone who knows me knows that alfalfa is one of those herbs that I grew up on. And alfalfa is loaded with minerals, and it is absolutely calcium rich and all kinds of different minerals. But that is because the taproot, it can extend 15 to 30 feet in depth into the soil. That allows it to pull up tons and tons of minerals. It also is outstanding for the pituitary gland. Now, why in the world would you think that was important? And why would I bring that in when we're talking about vitamin D? Well, the pituitary gland, when we have a child that in their growth pattern or growth curve, they're not growing at the speed they should, or they don't have that burst of growth. And it's often the pituitary gland can be involved. And so alfalfa is one of the things that I always use to help children hit their normal growth curves with that. It also was something that I always used for growing pains. I remember our oldest son grew like 6 inches in the summer of his 8th grade year, and alfalfa was what I used to counter it. So longevity becomes very, very important here. So we're looking at acidity, allergies, digestion, anemia, joint inflammation, insomnia. I will tell you, I've got multiple testimonies over the years for how longevity helps people to have a better sleep, a deeper sleep, and it helps them reset their circadian rhythms.
Hi, this is Greg Halliday in the Solle Naturals corporate offices. Today I'm talking about longevity, and one of the questions that we get about this wonderful product is why we included a certain probiotic, Propionum bacterium freudenreichii, big long name. The product is very useful for mood support and for immune system support. and for strong bones and everything to do with our structural system and really beauty of skin, bones, health, all of that. So why the probiotic? Well, if you don't mind, let me just read to you what Dr. Allison Caldwell Andrews, the Chief Scientific Advisor at Solle, has said about that in a training. Why is Propionibacterium freudenreichii part of this formula? Well, she says, remember, and I'm going to read a little bit from her, remember that this probiotic makes B12. B12 is a very important vitamin. A lot of times people search for that in shots and other sources for mood support and for energy support. And this probiotic does make that vitamin, that important vitamin. So that's one reason. B12 is important for both mood and energy, but there's more. It also makes the vitamin K2. K2 it makes in the long chain form, which is the MK9 form. That is a huge component in bone health and in heart health, both of those things, and in much more. I'm absolutely certain it's involved in everything. Dr. Allison Caldwell Andrews says that our understanding of K2 is probably 20 years behind that of D3. D3 is another important vitamin that, by the way, is included in the LongeviD formula. And so to maximize its absorption and use, we need this probiotic. In addition to that, so much more is done by the probiotic. So very important reason for Propionibacterium freudenreichii in longevity.
All right, and now Greg's going to join us here real quick and share an additional thought or two that he might have. So, Greg, if you could unmute yourself.
Well, hello, Valerie, and hello, everybody. Let me just say that it's funny in trying to explain the purposes for some of the ingredients. There's so much interwoven, as you well know, Valerie. Valerie is part of the development team of all of our products, and Propionibacterium. It's interesting. I mentioned that it actually creates B12, and it's amazing the more we understand about probiotics, how much of their activity is, besides defense and other things, is the creation of certain key vitamins. And sometimes I think people, they slough that off, or they brush that off. That's the word I was looking for. They brush that off because, okay, well, how much of it does it really make? But see, that's the interesting thing about PF, Propionibacterium. Part of the studies show that it actually makes dietarily significant amounts. This is the wording. It was published in at least 2 countries in Europe, and I'm almost certain that Germany is one. And I failed to mention that in the video. That's the reason there was so much buzz around it, because they're saying it makes enough of it to make a difference. So I wanted to add that one point. And then I think the other point that was interesting to me, I kind of threw it in at the end. I didn't really explain it. That Dr. Allison talks about how the same bacteria makes vitamin K2. And, of course, that's an incredibly important cofactor in bone health. But I think what she's saying when she says our understanding is probably 20 or 30 years behind D3 of K2 is that you're seeing a lot written and published about D3 in recent years. I know that, during the last 4 years and all the upheaval with all the talk about the pandemic and everything, D3 really took center stage because it was one of the measures that was used to determine how strong or how resistant one's immune system would be, and how severe that you might experience a certain virus. And you could say that in general, of course, our immune system, the stronger that we can help it be, which is something we have some control over. We maybe more than people think. There is strong nutritional, and I would add equal attention to emotional health. Those two so directly affect strength of the immune system and resistance to what might come that we can't always foresee. Well, Dr. Allison's saying, okay, you heard all this talk about D3. It's measurable. You have a lot of people convinced going, yeah, if those levels are higher, I do better in a lot of things, in terms of mood, in terms of immunity, and a lot of things. So it was important for us to have a high amount of D3. I can't remember, Valerie, if you mentioned, it's 1,000 IUs per capsule. So it is a very, very good amount that can make a difference. Well, Dr. Alice says, well, K2, this is just her opinion. It might be just as important. Well, all this attention to D3, well, the K2, which this friendly bacteria also creates in our body, let's watch over the next 20 years. It may just be much more key and involved than we know. And my own limited experience through these years, I just say limited because we all see what we're exposed to, is that things are much more interwoven than we know. And when such a key vitamin as K2, to me, I can't, all 100% of me believes it's just as important to the D3. So there's a couple of strong reasons why we have the propionum bacterium Freudenreichia in this formula, Val.
Thank you so much, Greg. And yes, um, the I think in fact, I'd written it down when I was talking to Allison. She called it the symphony of factors. And I do believe that
Love
that
that.
is part of the uniqueness of what our formulas bring to the table because how we're using like alfalfa is the whole plant powder that's in there. So we're getting all those benefits. So thank you so much for getting on and sharing, my friend.
You betcha.
So goji berries is one of the other components, and a lot of people are familiar with goji berries. There's people that snack on them. That their common name is wolfberry. But what are some of the things that goji berries are good for? Well, they support the eyesight. They help support the immune system. We see kidneys again. We see cardiovascular. So you're starting to see kind of a theme with why we blended the plants and the bacteria there, the probiotic that we chose, because looking into in support that foundational structural part of a system in the body. And plantain. Plantain is something I grew up with that was just, out there where I grew up in the Ozarks. I love plantain. It's a plant that right there I revere right there with alfalfa. It is, along with alfalfa, almost like ridiculously high in calcium. It has so much to support. So you can see combining, because we all know that uh, vitamin D helps to drive the minerals and the calcium into the bones. Well, it didn't drive it, it supports its assimilation and the bioavailability so that we can use it. And so plantain becomes an ideal plant to use here. It again is also supporting kidney and bladder health, and it's known for skin health and healing, just like some of these other plants. And that's one of the other things that vitamin D3 is and D is known for is your skin health. So when we look at the different components that are in this formula, and again, these are just some of the highlights. This is not all an all-inclusive breakdown here. So we know that the vitamin D comes in strong in that reindeer lichen. The plantain leaf. We've got the calcium. We've got the zinc. Look at the alfalfa. A, C, E, K, D, B6, B12, vitamin U, trace minerals, calcium, phosphorus, magnesium, potassium, sodium, silica, iron, amino acids, electrolytes, fiber. It is a powerhouse when it comes to supporting bone health. In fact, all the way through my pregnancies with my children, alfalfa was how I got my calcium and all my minerals and you guys, those that know me for a long time, know that I'm very picky, wanting to make certain that that baby is supported well in utero, and alfalfa did it for me and many of my mothers I've worked with. So the fact that we've got alfalfa in here makes this an ideal formula um, and all the way around for our pregnant moms. The goji berries. We've got the vitamin A, C, iron, copper, selenium, zinc, antioxidants, carotenoids. So that means we've got stuff in there that's going to help with the eyesight. It's going to help with our helping keep the body from rusting, as they say. Gaduchu, high in protein. And it's got the iron, zinc, copper. So we're seeing zinc through many of these, along with the D. Well, zinc, not only does that have strong antiviral properties, but zinc is outstanding for helping the skin heal. And when a person actually is really low in zinc, they get very antisocial. They don't want to be around people as much. So we can come in and see what zinc is doing to support, again, on because we make our formulas to hit all kinds of levels in the body. Copper, calcium, manganese. Here's we've got our bacteria that Greg was talking about, the PF, the B12, and K2 producing. And then we've got organic MCT oil. Why do we have that in there? The fat is important because to utilize vitamin D, it is a fat soluble vitamin. Fat becomes very important, and this is a great high quality fat. And MCT oil's got it has its own properties that help the body to support the ideal bacterias in the body for its own health. So you can see this is a powerhouse of a little formula. And as we wrap up, like I always like to do, wrapping up with a quote: keep your vitality. A life without health is like a river without water. So here's to wishing good health for all of you, my friends, and thank you for joining us.